And this webinar, including also with the other webinars that we have had so far, are based on the HCT platform. So I will just explain briefly what it is. So the idea of this is that you have the hydrogen training and knowledge transfer platform that will promote knowledge sharing and information between the different actors, different stakeholders, from academia to industry, policymakers, etc. This will be based on different online learning tools that will be available through our website. And we want to exploit and show which are the solutions that we can provide to these different supply chains. So with this, we have organized 3 webinars already. The first one was to explain which was the role of hydrogen in Norway to boost the economy in remote communities. Second one was on the maritime applications of hydrogen. And the third one, that was the first one that we organized along with the other 2 projects from the Hydrogen People Alliance, was how can renewables sustain resilient communities. All the information from all these webinars, you can find them for free in our website, and you have just to register to the website to access all the presentations. So as part of the huge project, we have 5 different case studies that we are studying. And one of them is the case study from our partners in Iceland, New Icelandic Energy. And this particular case study is looking at the use and the deployment of a hydrogen truck infrastructure. And that's why we are organizing this webinar today. So if you want to learn more about the project, feel free to follow us on our social media channels or on our website. So just to avoid any more delays, let me introduce you our first speaker. So our first speaker is Alan Nolan. Alan is the chair of the Hydrogen Mobility Ireland, and he will present us the work that they are doing in terms of the planning for a hydrogen truck infrastructure in Ireland. Including in this, and I see that there's been the link already in the chat. So the Dublin City University is doing a survey on hydrogen trucks, and James Carton is leading this study. He has asked us if you can click on the link that is available on the chat now, and if you can fill in the survey that is basically related to the work that we'll be doing today with this webinar. So with this, I'll just leave the floor to Alan. So Alan, whenever you're ready.
Yes, just let me try and find my my slide.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I've got 10 minutes to talk about saving the world, I think, so I better move quickly at it. I can't seem to get my, have I been given share option?
Yes, you should be able to share your screen. Is it bring?
Not yet. 1 second. Is that visible?
No, it's showing up, yes.
Yes, okay, that's good. Okay, moving quickly along. Just a little bit of background on Hydrogen Mobility Ireland, HMI, formed early in 2019. 13 commercial members, 4 policy stakeholders, and academic links like DCU, who've already been mentioned, and Belfast Met. Delivered a full roadmap for the rollout of hydrogen as a workable zero-emission fuel at the end of 2019, and is currently becoming a company by limited guarantee. For Ireland, the challenge of decarbonising transport is fairly massive, and I suppose trying to show that Ireland is not just a good potential market for hydrogen fuel cell trucks, but that we can't deal with these problems in any effective way without hydrogen fuel cell trucks. So transport is the second highest CO2 producer in the country after agriculture. But when you look at some progress being made in agriculture, the challenge of trying to decarbonize on the transport side is particularly big. And while transport is often seen as a sector that includes leisure driving, let's say, it is also the sector that provides commuting to and from all of the other sectors, and also delivers and collects all of the products of those other sectors. So if you like, part of the responsibility for decarbonizing in transport also rests with those end users who to some degree need to be incentivized, because for them the cheapest option is often the first choice, and that's not usually the environmentally best choice. Ireland has produced a very strong climate action plan, updated this year, and it sees 1 million electric cars on the road by 2030 and a 7% per annum reduction, totaling about 51% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 to be set in legislation. And transport obviously has a fairly key focus in this, with no diesel-only purchases of issues of buses and some other vehicles immediately in that case. And when we look at the challenges facing the sector and you look at solutions, often there's a discussion or a debate about which is the best solution, battery electric or fuel cell. And certainly from our viewpoint in Hydrogen Mobility Ireland, it requires both. These are not competing technologies, but ones that support each other. And I think it's going to require both to deliver on a project of this scale. If we look at distance driven, which is not the only issue, I think, and not the only issue affecting choice, but it is a very good place to start. And if we look at the diagram there, transport and environment have produced a view of the future, which would suggest that by 2050, 2/3 of the heavy vehicles on the road are likely to be EVs, and the other third fuel cell vehicles. And they see distance driven as the key factor affecting the choice by the end user, based, I think, particularly on price. And I don't know if it's the only issue for choice, but the line on which the decision is made is roughly that 480 kilometers a day, which underlines the point at which that choice might be made. And yet trying to make calculations to see how that impacts on replacement, what sort of vehicles, what numbers might be needed, and what sort of savings can be made, can be quite difficult, because a lot of the data available is fairly general average mileages. And as an example, CSO, the Central Statistics Office, showed the average mileage for goods vehicles, combined light and heavy, at 22,400 per year. And of course, you would say that's well within EV ranges, but that is hundreds of thousands of vehicles, some very large mileages and some very small mileages. So I've tried to look at some other area, and Road Safety Authority collect odometer readings at the point of vehicle testing, heavy vehicle testing. And their data shows that the average for 2-axle HGVs is about 48,000 per year, and 3 axles is 73. And when we go to look at the types of vehicles recording over 100,000 kilometers per year, which is in the territory that Transport and Environment have indicated, it includes about 5,000 heavy goods vehicles over 7.5 tons, about 700 light goods vehicles, and about 700 buses and coaches. But of course, they're not the only vehicles that would have regular requirements to travel over 480 kilometers a day. That's about the return journey between Dublin and Cork. So there are many people in the commercial vehicle world who would, if not doing 100,000 a year, make that journey and have to make that sort of journey per day on a regular basis. So I think the position is wider. In HMI, we've tried to take the view that the best people to talk to about what is needed and what needs to be delivered for transport users are those people themselves. And we've established a vehicle end user group, and these are going to be, and these are key people very enthusiastic for the project, including some very big operators in their sectors, from heavy vehicles to coaches and buses to logistics and taxis, but also their national representative organizations, so that we can get an overview of the impact on their sector. And it was in that context that DCU had worked with them to survey operators. This is a particularly challenging time for transport operators in Ireland, given not just COVID, but Brexit as a challenge, as well as the issue of facing the challenge of decarbonising over the next number of years, and with no zero emitting options currently available. And when you think of the decision to change your vehicles now for a new lower emitting diesel vehicle or some other fuel that's equally or is low emitting also, but not zero, a concern as to how that vehicle will be treated. Will it be penalised at some point in the next number of years? And you know, what's the residual value of such a vehicle likely to be? And whereas that's not going to stop fleet replacement at a time when we really do need to reduce emissions, it is likely to dampen it down. And if we look at the chart that's there, you'll see, while there's an average of 6,000 or thereabouts vehicles registered for the first time in the heavy goods sector in Ireland each year, only about 2,500 of those are new vehicles, and about 3,500 are used heavy goods vehicles imported from the UK. And you'll see over that period, there has been a significant growth in the number of imported used vehicles and a drop in the number of new vehicles. If you look at 2020, and while there has been some impact of COVID in there, it reduced down to 2,000 vehicles in the year, but the used imports have continued to stay at a high level. That transition to a zero emission fleet for Ireland, and if we look at it, is pretty enormous. The replacement of the fleet is driven by two things, really: the number of new registrations and the percentage of those registrations that are going to be zero emitting. And if we look at this, we've only had an average of 2,500 heavy goods vehicle registrations over recent years. If 6.5% of those new heavy goods registrations are zero emitting, that's the same figure, by the way, as the figure for electric vehicles registered in Ireland so far this year, which is actually growing on what it had been in the past. But if it was 6.5, it would take 200 years at that rate to replace the fleet. If it was even up to a third of those registrations being zero emitting, it would still take 50 years. But of course, if we were talking about percentages on that 6,000 overall figure, a third would replace the fleet in 20 years. And a third of that 6,000 would actually replace half of the fleet in 10 years. And if you think the target set by the government in legislation is to reduce emissions by 50% over that period, that's a nice sort of join up between the two figures. If that were to go to 50% of that 6,000, you could actually target to see the whole fleet turned over by mid-2030s. Now, it's not a linear thing. It's not going to stay at that percentage. It will start lower and will go up to almost 100% towards the end, but it's talking about that sort of average that we're looking at. The Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland has also looked at the heavy vehicle fleet. 40,000 heavy vehicles are in the fleet in Ireland, and 45% of them are 10 years and older, which is obviously a concern. And they say if transition doesn't occur, the danger of locking in a large cohort of heavy goods vehicle to diesel over many years is likely. And that's in the context of heavy goods vehicle activity likely to treble in Ireland between 2015 and 2050, which is the period that they had looked at. Again, the greater size and weight of heavy goods vehicles, which we know substantially increases the barriers to batteries serving as a substitute for diesel. And in their view, again, policies to favour alternative fuel vehicles should incentivise the sale of new technology to the point where it overcomes initial barriers and begins to achieve a greater market share. The state has already moved with some provisions in that area, support grants for purchase of alternative fuel vehicles, which does include hydrogen fuel cells, ranging from 40% to 60% of the differential in price between the equivalent standard fuel vehicle and the vehicle they're looking for. But of course, it needs a range of such supports to make this work for end users. The DCU survey, and it hasn't been released and it's not finalized, and I know they are still collecting in information responses from people in the sector who are willing to make the submission. But at an early stage, they did share some information with us, which is 63 fleet operators at the time, representing almost 3,000 vehicles. And it showed that the respondents showed the most interest in hydrogen for decarbonisation. 49% of them were interested in being directly involved in a potential shared project by aggregating their orders to bring hydrogen trucks to Ireland as early as possible. If, as an example, a HMI project to aggregate orders could deliver 500 hydrogen fuel cell heavy vehicles to replace high mileage diesel HGVs, the emission savings would be the equivalent of about 20,000 electric vehicle cars replacing fossil fuel cars. So if you like, the return for funding and supporting such a project is really huge for the state in terms of seeking to meet its targets. In those responses from those companies, one of the amazing things to me is that here are hard-nosed business people looking at their business and all the pressures of price and everything else on it. And they are very interested in seeing a solution that at the moment is relatively expensive, is an unknown technology for them. In many cases with vehicle producers they have not dealt with before and who have no support infrastructure in Ireland. And yet they see it because it fits more closely to the models that they need. And I think issues of lining up plug-in times for recharging vehicles with rest breaks for drivers required by tachograph requirements, I think is a potential nightmare, and the reality of the road that it is very likely to match on the occasions that they are urgently needed. In relation to one of the key pieces of this, which is the supply of hydrogen for the vehicles, I think you could say this should not be a problem. There are at least 2 green hydrogen projects in the West Coast, I think very close to planning submission, if not already there, who suggest they might be coming on stream as early as 2022. That remains to be seen, but very, very quickly, I think. And a recent announcement by the ESB of a 1.4 gigawatt Green Atlantic project coming on stream, hopefully somewhere in 2028. And I think a rather excited, but not too far off the mark, local politician suggesting there's an almost limited supply of wind energy offshore on the west coast of Ireland, with up to 70,000 megawatts based on a report by Shannon Voinsport Company, and the opportunity for Ireland to become a major producer of hydrogen for global export, but of course also producer of hydrogen to help decarbonise the transport sector. For us in HMI, one of the key challenges and one of the key parts is the rollout of, and I'm sure everybody involved in hydrogen infrastructure, is refueling stations, because it really is a challenge for investors in that sector to see very small numbers of vehicles which need to be supported, but volume required to make it a self-funding or profitable enterprise is going to take some time. In fact, one of the key issues for the early producers of hydrogen is because potential customers either in energy or in industry will take some considerable time to change over the systems to use hydrogen. The presence of larger numbers of heavy vehicles using hydrogen from the earliest stages is actually a key part, I think, of the requirements of those who will be producing hydrogen. So they're all very self-supporting. HMI has produced a rollout plan which will start, like many of these projects, with a hub around a major city, probably Dublin, and rolled out to other major cities, and followed by motorway strings. And I think if you look at the map, we have tried to ensure that hydrogen can become what would you say, a very practical fuel for use. If I look again at some of the overviews by organizations like ASEA, the Vehicle Manufacturing Organization, and they show a project for Ireland and they suggest 2 or 4 hydrogen refueling stations would suffice. And that's really down to averages and numbers of vehicles. It doesn't take account of, if you like, the size of the country, the length of journeys, and the fact that you need to support people to get to zero emitting transport for their locations. A key part of what we have there is the 10T network, given that it will be, we believe, a requirement at European level to provide hydrogen refueling for vehicles coming to Ireland from the continent. We should invest early in that and gain the benefits ourselves, because it will really be the backbone of a national infrastructure for refueling that I think will reassure those people who will want to make that shift to hydrogen. I mentioned earlier that there is a key challenge, a debate between many people about hydrogen and electric vehicles and which option and so on. But I have to say, for me, with my many years experience in the motor industry, the key issue is really you should never put all of your bets on one technology. It is a very risky and I think a bad strategy, because we don't know at any stage if what seems to be the best solution today, and that could be any of the ones we're looking at, could turn out to be a cul-de-sac, because something that we don't yet know will actually make it not what we thought it was. And if you need an example, just think how the whole world saw diesel as a very strong solution to reducing CO2 from transport, but that view changed fairly quickly over a period of time. So it really is a hugely important strategic issue to support more than one solution. The picture there, I don't know if people know it. It's a car called Jamais Content. Amazing that an electric car in 1899, in the 19th century, set the world land speed record. The first vehicle to go over 100 kilometers an hour. It went to 106 kilometers an hour. Amazing, and you would have thought that electric vehicles would have kicked on from that, but it had range issues, and after each run for the timing, it had to recharge, and petroleum products came onto the market very cheaply, and wisdom at the time was they provided a far better option. You just wonder where we would be with battery technology and electric vehicle technology if the two options had been backed at that stage and electric vehicle range had continued to be worked at from 1899. So listen, thank you very much. That's my piece.
Thank you, Alan. Very interesting presentation. So we can now move on to the next speaker. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions you can use the chat button. You can find this on the top right of your screen, next to the hand up. You have to press the chat button, and you can then ask questions to the chat option. Okay. So we can move to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Jon Bjørn Skulason. So Jon Bjørn is from the Icelandic New Energy, and he will talk about hydrogen trucks in Iceland, the next step. So Jon Bjørn, whenever you're ready, the screen
is yours. You see my slides now?
Yes.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Jon Bjørn Skulason. I'm the General Manager for Icelandic New Energy. We're a member of the huge project. We're also a member of the Nordic activity called Next Wave, supported by Nordic Innovation, which is also dealing with hydrogen truck and activities in the Nordic countries. So I'm going to briefly talk about the vision here in Iceland. Why isn't I'm not getting my next slide? So in Iceland, we started demonstrations already in 2003. We had 3 fuel cell buses and the world's first commercial hydrogen refueling station. This is some long time ago, and unfortunately there was not a direct continuance between 2003 and present. I think most of us know why that happened, and the development was a bit slower than we hoped for. Today we have actually 2 hydrogen refueling stations in operation and a small fleet of vehicles through the Hydrogen Mobility Europe project, H2Me. We produce all the hydrogen for those stations at the geothermal power plant at Helliseiði, and there we use actually nighttime electricity for all the production. So this is all a green hydrogen solution. The government policy for emission reduction is quite ambitious. There is a certain target which Iceland has to reach through the Paris Agreement, but the government has actually raised that goal for 2030. And as some of you know, today there is almost no emission from electric production or any other industry than transport. So almost all our fossil fuel use is by land transport and maritime activities. This means actually that we have to do a drastic reduction in use of fossil fuels in transport and maritime activities. And we have been extremely successful with battery electric vehicles. At the present, around 50% of all new sold cars in Iceland have a plug. So they're either pure battery electric or they have a plug-in hybrid. However, passenger vehicles can never alone fulfill Iceland's ambitious climate targets. Actually, I added this picture also. This is from a walk a few days ago. This is a volcano putting out quite a bit of CO2, which is still ongoing in Iceland, but that's a different topic. As I said before, all the energy use is based on renewable energy, and we are actually one of the global leaders in providing zero emission vehicle incentives. People tend to forget or connect all these zero emission incentives to Norway, but it actually started in Iceland quite some time ago. There is no VAT on zero emission vehicles, and we have a 24% VAT on everything. So there is quite a bit of incentive for anybody who buys a battery electric vehicles. There is almost no annual tax. There's free parking and etc., just to name a few. Still, these incentives have a very little impact for larger vehicles. They are in the VAT system, so they get the VAT refunded. And if you look at the picture below, you can see that there is considerable emission coming from trucks, vans, and equipment. It's about 23% of Iceland's total transport emission. So this is a segment which is very important to address, and we have to find solution how to implement such vehicles in much larger scale than we have done so far. National funding is now being provided to stimulate projects in other categories than passenger vehicles. Until now, almost all the funding from the government has been towards battery electric vehicles, and that is almost all aimed towards passenger vehicles. But of course, we have a small introduction of battery electric vans at the moment. The funding for 2021 is relatively low, but we are hoping, and there is a discussion to triple that funding in the national, depending on the national budget for 2022. And then we foresee that we can actually subsidize or support projects with bigger vehicles. And we're hoping some of the money for 2021 will also go that pathway. And this could be a potentially match funding towards Nordic funding or European funding. But there are also incentives in place today for larger vehicles. The annual tax, which has been revoked from zero-emission vehicles, also apply for larger vehicles, so that's a considerable incentive. And then we have a very special incentive that we can depreciate zero-emission vehicles 125% in year one. So most other vehicles are depreciated 20% per year. So this is actually a reduction of income tax for companies when you can actually depreciate more than the value of the vehicle. Zero-emission buses carry no VAT, but in general other buses carry VAT. So that's a considerable incentive for the potential to substitute the bus fleet. And currently we actually have over 10% of the conventional bus transport system in Reykjavik based on battery electric buses. And then we have vans below 5 tons. They will carry no import duties. Today, fossil fuel vans carry about 13% non-refundable VAT. So for the smaller segment, there is also an incentive. But then through our discussion with the different transport companies, we have realized that this is not enough to actually make them move, because as many of you know, the vehicles are quite expensive. So we are currently lobbying for the government to provide increased incentives, and we've suggested a few, for example, to subsidize long-haul trucking on zero-emission vehicles. We have a system today where companies placed far away from export harbors can actually apply for financial support from the government. So we are now suggesting that this could be used for zero-emission trucking and to stimulate customers to demand a zero-emission truck. We have a fairly high road tax, or in Icelandic called þungaskattur, means, and we have asked that for zero-emission trucks, this tax would be eliminated, and that would have quite a substantial impact on the TCO. We could even focus these incentives towards trucks that drive a long distance. That would have the largest impact on CO2. We're also suggesting increased funding in general for subsidizing trucks and infrastructure. It's complicated to build both at the same time. And as we know, we're potentially just putting in a small fleet of vehicles in the beginning. So the business case for the infrastructure is not very good. And then, of course, CO2 emissions should be included in all governmental tenders, for example, for road and building and constructions and etc. And the price of CO2 must be quite high so that it will have a big impact that those who get the tenders will provide zero-emission trucking. We have no confirmation that all of these suggestions will be implemented. We are pushing the government to do so. There is an election this autumn, and we sincerely hope that some of these incentives will be included, because that will pave the road for zero-emission trucks in general. And then the government has now decided to initiate the work on a roadmap for electrofuels in Iceland. This is now being conducted and should be ready later this year. And we are quite certain that this will include a large segment on trucks and maritime aspects. But as you see on this map, it's not very complicated to build infrastructure for hydrogen trucks. The ring road is only about 1,400 kilometers. And distances between key hubs is maybe somewhere between 200 and 300 kilometers. However, we have to remember that most of these roads are crossing mountains, and these are quite heavy roads in the wintertime with snow and etc. So even though the distance is maybe 200 to 400 kilometers between main hubs, battery electric trucks might have a trouble to get in between all of these locations without quite substantial infrastructure for charging. But we also have to keep in mind, even though it says there we can use one station at these different locations, then of course redundancy is very important. We can't just build one pump. And then if a station fails, the trucks are out of fuel and can't continue. So that has to be kept in mind. There is a considerable discussion on Power-to-X in Iceland. There's a lot of interest for export, and many companies are now discussing with the utilities in Iceland to actually start a large-scale hydrogen production. If this happens, of course, we'll get a large-scale hydrogen production in place, and that means a much cheaper source of hydrogen, which impacts then the use of direct hydrogen for trucks, buses, vans, even taxi rental companies, and of course, the maritime aspects if we deploy direct hydrogen into ships. And then, of course, we would then produce some electrofuels, ammonia, synthetic methane, methanol, blue crude, which could both be used as fuel for Iceland and or be exported. So actually to build such a Power-to-X applications that would support the hydrogen basis for Iceland to access to reach the economies of scale. But we need to act now. It takes, as most of you know, 1 or 2 years to actually get projects into place. You could see from the slides from Alan that at the pace they're doing it at the moment, it could take 200 years to replace the total fleet. And we realized with battery electric vehicles that we imported the first OEM-produced battery electric vehicles in 2009, and there were 15 battery electric vehicles in Iceland in 2014. So that took 5 years to go from 3 to 15. So if we want to start replacing trucks, we have to start now. It's very important to build the infrastructure, maintenance, training of staff. This is all necessary before commercialization. It's impossible to just start with a big fleet. We have to do all the training, and we've learned that through the current operation, even though there is a small vehicle fleet. We don't see the climate targets being reached by the government if heavy-duty equipment is not put into place. We are quite certain that these simple incentives in the onset of implementation can prepare a full commercialization within 5 to 10 years. And few countries can guarantee that all the hydrogen produced is from renewable sources. And with economies of scale, I don't think many places can offer as cheap hydrogen as we would be able to do. So this is what we would like to do. So it's good that the OEMs are next in line to speak. And I sincerely hope they are ready to start delivering vehicles to us, because that's what we need. And as you can see, this is not the future, like this picture shows, this is not the future of trucking. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent, Björn. Thank you very much. So just a reminder, it seems that maybe some of you don't have access to the chat. So in the panel discussion, what we'll do is we'll activate the hands up, the raise hand option. And if you have any questions and you don't have the option to write in the chat, we will activate your mic. Okay. So we will proceed with the next speaker. The next speaker is Daniel Keller. Daniel is the COO of Hydrogen Hyundai Mobility in Switzerland. Daniel, whenever you're ready, you can turn on your camera and share your screen. In the meantime, we'll follow up with the introduction. So Daniel, as I said, is the Chief Operating Officer of Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility, which is a partnership between Hyundai Motor Group and the Swiss company H2 Energy. Daniel is responsible for the entire operational control and procurement, transport, refueling and maintenance of the truck fleet, and the support of all the different infrastructures. So we are looking forward to hearing what has been basically all the processes that you have taken in Switzerland. And Daniel, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Good. Okay. My name is Daniel Keller. I'm the CEO of HHM. HHM, Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility, is a joint venture between Hyundai Motor Company in Korea and H2 Energy in Switzerland. And I would like to tell you a little bit about our trucks, our ecosystem we have in Switzerland, and what you do every day. Let's start first, with the bigger vision Hyundai has for the future. You know, Hyundai is planning by 2030 to deploy more than 500,000 vehicles on the street, you know, with the fuel cell stacks, and an additional 200,000 stacks for non-automotive business. And Hyundai is going to invest in the next couple of years more than 10 billion in US dollars, really to make sure that that we are ahead of the pack. So this is the bigger picture. One question which is always coming up, and Alan, I think he just mentioned it, is there one technology you can cover everything and is the best and the greatest? We believe there is no one technology who can really fit everything, you know, because it's always a discussion between the hydrogen solution or the BEV solution, the battery electric vehicle solution. And we really believe that they can coexist in parallel. And Hyundai also has both those technologies in their portfolio. So we really go on two ways. So it's not an either or decision. I think there is no one solution who fits all the segments. There might be good reasons why you go for a battery electric vehicle truck. That's fine. But we also believe, of course, that there are good reasons why you go for the hydrogen solution. And we have seen a very nice graphic about Ireland. You know, it is 480 kilometers. When it's a larger distance, it makes more sense for hydrogen. And I think this is really fitting the experience we are making every day here in Switzerland. So what are the advantages of a hydrogen truck? So the range for one charge is about 400 kilometers. And you can recharge a hydrogen truck in a really short time. It's only taking you about 15 minutes to recharge it full. I mean, if you take in consideration how long it takes to recharge the battery trucks, it's just a much longer period. And then we also believe you really have to look about the deployment. If you deploy a single truck to one operator, or if you deploy a whole fleet of trucks. Because the problem is, if you have to recharge in parallel a large number of heavy-duty trucks with the really heavy batteries and strong batteries, you need a very well developed grid. And this is not available in many places. So you would have first, you know, to scale up the grid in order to make sure that you can charge them in parallel. But with hydrogen, you can produce it somewhere, you know, close to the electric production sites, and then you can deploy it directly to the trucks. So I really believe it's really depending on the segments and the size of the fleet, what you want to accomplish. If you go for either a BEV solution or a hydrogen solution, but there is no just black and white. You know, now let's talk a little bit about the Switzerland setup. Here you see the first 10 trucks, mass-produced trucks going on the ship in Korea and then being shipped to Europe, and also the first public hydrogen refilling station built up in Switzerland. Then the trucks have been shipped to Antwerp and then have been transported on the road to Switzerland. Unfortunately, by a diesel truck, but we're working on finding better solutions to do this also emission-free. Then, you know, what was really important for us, this is not a demo project. This is a project which is really showing that the system is working in a normal daily usage. So on the 7th of October, we handed over the first 10 trucks to the first 10 customers at the Public Transportation Museum in Switzerland. Because of COVID, we could only invite 150 people. But as you can see, you know, there are really 10 different companies and they have 10 different ways how they use their trucks. So it's not just a pilot. So really, they have to stand every day and stay on the same level as the diesel brothers. You know, that's really something which was really important, that from day one, they are in a normal daily usage and they don't have any special treatment. So today we have 45 vehicles in operation. And as of yesterday, we have reached 946,000 kilometers. You know, the ones we charge to our clients. We have some more kilometers, of course, but coming to this later, we are having a pay-per-use model. So 946,000 kilometers are charged so far to our clients as of yesterday. So next week, we're gonna reach the 1 million kilometer mark. And with those 45 trucks, we already saved about 438,000 tons of CO2, you know, roughly. And this is always a number I'm asking people, because it's we are always talking about CO2, but people don't really have an idea about the numbers. We are saving every day roughly about 10 tons of CO2 now with the 45 trucks on the street. And as we have seen, you know, with the data from Ireland, it really, the sweet spot for a hydrogen truck is really when it comes to distance. That's really also something, you know, it's just a fact. We have clients, they make regularly every day over 650 kilometers. And we also in a small country, so east to west, you know, we are talking about 348 kilometers and 220 north to south. It's probably a little bit comparable to Ireland. So if you're over those 400 kilometers, it's really it's a great vehicle, and people love it, and especially the driver love it. You know, I'm coming later to the details, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this. But every day, 45 vehicles are on the street. Switzerland, small country, yeah. I think it was a little bit overwhelming. It's even smaller than Ireland, as it looks like. I don't know if the scale is right here. So we have 45 trucks now. We are planning to have by 2023 1,000 trucks on the street and 1,600 by 2025. And in parallel, right now, we are talking to several countries in Europe, like Germany, the Netherlands, etc., to deploy more trucks on such markets. What is really important, you know, to be able to build up an ecosystem and the network of service station HRSs, we have to focus on markets where we can deploy, let's say, 300 trucks in a certain amount of time. So because if we get a lot of requests for one truck, let's say to Spain or something, one truck, you can't really build up a network. It's just never paying off. And the production of Hyundai by next year will exceed 2,000 vehicles. That's the possibilities we have to produce. So 2,000 plus trucks by 2022, and so we should have enough trucks if you're wishing to get some in the future. Why does it work in Switzerland? You know, Switzerland is a high-price country. And I think one of the most important thing was the H2 Mobility Association. You know, there have been truck operators and HRS companies were sitting together and said, "Hey, we want to change something, and we move forward." You know. And with this clear commitment, they engaged to bring also the truck manufacturers together. And this is why Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility was also founded. So with no government subsidies, that's very important, you know, they said, we want to be emission free. And it's always about economics, because we also believe it's only working if you have the chance to make money, because everybody wants to be green, but it's also about stakeholder issues. You know, you need to make money while you are going to be green in the future. So the price is always a very important part in the whole puzzle. So in Switzerland, the diesel price is much higher than in the rest of Europe. And so there we have, it makes it much easier for us to reach the TCO level. You know, if you look at Luxembourg, for example, that's the cheapest diesel in Europe, and you know those heavy, those long haul trucks, they're just getting there, and everybody's talking about range because they are filling up their tanks and they drive through whole Europe and back because it's just the cheapest diesel. So if you can have the same price levels anywhere, you know, range is not an issue anymore as long as you have the infrastructure. And then, you know, the steering, that's the governmental part. We have a road tax for heavy-duty transportation since 2002 in Switzerland, where you pay, depending on the diesel engine category, if you have a Euro 5 or Euro 6, you pay less than if you have a Euro 3 or something. And you pay by weight and by kilometer. And the emission-free vehicles, so our trucks, are exempted from this regulation. So this is helping us actually to reach the same TCO level compared to a diesel truck, but only if you make, let's say, about 80,000 plus kilometers a year. If you're below those 80,000 kilometers a year, really a bit more expensive, and then, you know, that could be a solution or you know, a segment for the battery electric trucks, for example. So it's really important to reach the TCO and to be comparable, you know, in a normal economical surrounding, because end of the day you need to make money with the truck. So we have taken a holistic approach. So we have the customers, so the operators of the trucks. Then we have the Hyundai as the truck OEM. And we have a service part. I'm coming later to this one. And on the other side, we need to have supply, the H2 production, which has to be green. So, and also we have to build up a refilling infrastructure. This would not be possible by just one player. You know, I mean, we are providing the trucks, but we are working very, very close with the H2 production and the refueling infrastructure companies to make sure that we are growing everything evenly. You know, because end of the day, again, you know, you need to be able to make money. And you need to have partners who believe in this vision, and then they go the way. This way, we have overcome the chicken or egg discussion. Because it's always first you have the, let's say, the infrastructure to produce hydrogen and a refueling infrastructure, but you don't have the trucks, or you have first the trucks and no infrastructure. So everything has to be built up evenly, and I can tell you that's not easy. You know, it's an everyday, let's say, little fight. Sometimes, you know, you have issues, but it's the biggest challenge to really build up everything evenly, to make sure that the whole ecosystem is working and you have the right amount of hydrogen at the right HRS with the right number of trucks being refilled there. So this is really something we are experiencing every day. So it's yeah, it's a big part of my day, making sure that everything is running smoothly and my people are really running around and do the extra mile to make sure it's working. So the business setup in Switzerland is pretty simple. We get the trucks from Hyundai. Hyundai Hydrogen Mobility is the distributor for whole Europe. So even Iceland would be in our area. And then we have a pay-per-use model. I'm coming later to this one. And we have a contract with Hydrospider to make sure we get green hydrogen and in the requested quality to be delivered to the HRS, to the refueling stations. And then our trucks have a card and go and get their hydrogen there. So it's really like a closed loop and a closed system, and to make sure that everybody in the system has a return on investment. Because end of the day, you have to take quite some money into your hands. I was talking about this hydrospider thing. So the whole value chain, so the hydropower plant, wind farms, PV systems supply electricity. They're producing hydrogen, which is transported into the HRS and then being used by our trucks. Because when I say our trucks, they are owned by HHM, all of them. And then end of the day, water is coming out, and people are always amazed. It's just water coming out, and they're really quiet. Now, pay-per-use model. You have heard it now several times, and you might ask yourself, why did they choose a pay-per-use model? So first, let's talk about what is included in the pay-per-use model. So a contract runs over 8 years. We need this time to depreciate the truck because the technology itself is still, I mean, if you just look at the truck side, it's more expensive than a diesel. It's just a matter of fact, and it's going to change over time. But as of right now, it's more expensive than a comparable diesel truck if you would just pay it and pay cash on the table. Then the fee per kilometer is calculated depending on the mileage they expect, plus the consumption. So everything is put into a price, and that's a fixed rate. He knows exactly what he has to pay per kilometer, and also can communicate this to clients. So every month it's being adjusted because the baseline we have is the petrol price, because we are also kind of in direct comparison with diesel. You know, if diesel is going up, then the hydrogen can also be a little bit higher because, you know, we are that's let's say the baseline. What is included? The whole insurance, it's a full, you know, don't think about anything insurance. So all fees and registration, vehicles audit, you know, MOT fees, everything, taxes, the tires also included, the hydrogen. Also the upfit, for example, is included, the cooling system, just everything you can imagine. It's a truck, you have a key and you can start doing business. What is not included, it's a driver, it's consumables like water, bulbs, you know, those little things, repairs caused by the customer. I mean, if he does something really bad, you know, it's covered by the insurance normally, but he has to pay his self-deduction. And we had to add these traffic violation tickets because those trucks, they have some power. We have been really surprised how many traffic tickets we already got with those 50 trucks. So they're really, you know, they have power. Now, advantages of the pay-per-use contract, and I think this is also the reason why we can deploy such high numbers, because we have learned in Iceland in I think 2003 or something, or 9, you already had trucks there, but you know, one truck is nothing. You want to go as fast as possible to a big fleet, because only if you have the big fleet you can justify to build up the whole infrastructure. And you know, we are a new OEM. I mean, honestly, who of you did know that Hyundai is producing trucks here in Europe? You've never seen a Hyundai truck. I mean, if you go to China, Korea, or even Japan, you see a lot of Hyundai trucks, but here in Europe, nobody knows. So this is an advantage. We take away that technology risk. You know, that's the next point, because our operators, if they would have taken one truck, you know, it wouldn't work. It's again, we have to build up, you know, in the same time, the whole infrastructure. And people, you know, I mean, Hyundai, can they build trucks? They haven't been sure. So we take the full risk. If the trucks are not running, there is no cost for the operator. It's all our risk. And financing and the residual value. If you ask me what is the residual value in 8 years for our trucks, I have absolutely no clue. Nobody can tell you, because we don't know about the hydrogen economy, how it's developing. Maybe, you know, there will be another technology coming, or many other countries will jump on the bandwagon. We just don't know now. And we are taking away this risk, you know, for the operators. They know during the 8 years, they pay X amount and then it's done, you know. They don't have to think about what's going to be with the trucks in the future. And we're also making sure this way, you know, with this closed system with Hydrospider, that the quality and accessibility of H2 is always given. Because if there is not enough hydrogen, for example, the trucks are not running, it's our financial risk. So we are taking away a lot of risks from the operators to make sure we can deploy larger quantities into a market. You know, by end of this year, we're going to get another 140 trucks here in Switzerland. Next year, over 300, and we already have orders for them. And this is only possible because we are taking away a lot of risk uncertainties for the operators, and this way we can deploy larger numbers, and that's how the ecosystem is starting to work. Ecosystem, I was talking about this. So we have two really important parts, and I think we heard it also from Iceland. The lesson learned is you need to have service. You know, you need to have, for example, workshops who are capable to repair such trucks, and on the other side, you have to have hydrogen refilling stations. I just added the kilometer number, so it's 220, 348 kilometers. That's the whole size of our country. And as of right now, I think we have 9 HRS systems or refilling stations, and we're going to have, let's say, another 10 to 12 more by end of next year. So they are now popping up all over the country along the main driving routes of our trucks, of course. And that's one thing, that's the HRS system. But you also need to do service. And this is very important for us because you don't have any technicians who have any experience with hydrogen, for example. And we also had to make sure with the local government that we have all those processes in place, and you know, to follow the safety regulations, because it's new. You know, we are working with them to actually set the base. So, for example, we've chosen Auto AG, which is a service provider with subsidiaries all over the country, and now we are taking a lot of actions to make sure that the technicians are up and running and really can repair the trucks. What we also figured out, and this is really interesting, you have 2 levels of technicians in such workshops. Some, they totally deny the new technology. They say, no, diesel, that's, you know, that's the future. I don't want to touch such a hydrogen truck. And we have some, they're really eager. They do whatever they can that they can touch and work on those trucks, you know. So it's also a mindset issue, as well as on the driver's side. You know, we have some drivers that say never ever. And for example, we have one driver, and this was really nice experience. He was telling me, Daniel, I love this truck, and can tell you why. Because I'm sitting in there the whole day, and I can listen to music, and I don't have the vibrations and the noise of a diesel engine, and I have the pure music experience. I mean, it sounds like crazy now, but you know, end of the day, those drivers are also a very important part in the whole idea of being, you know, zero emission and using such new technologies, because if they deny it, then it's taking much longer that you can deploy a larger number of trucks into a market. So drivers are really important, and the feedback we get from them is amazing. Yeah, as I said, Hyundai is building tens of thousands of trucks, so it's nothing new. It's just new here in Europe. When we're coming a little bit to the technique, or say the trucks we are using or having now, as of right now, we have the 4x2 fuel cell electric rigid truck, 36-ton cross combination vehicle, 19 the truck plus 18 tons for the trailer. And we are going to get end of the year. We already have the test truck here, a 6x2, which has a total weight of 42 tons, 27 plus 15 with the trailer. So as of right now, just a 4x2 on the street, and they're doing the job, as we have seen, close to 1 million kilometers by end of this week. And the tractor will be launched in 2024. And unfortunately, as of right now, only left-handed vehicles are available. But when I see the numbers about Ireland, maybe we have to change this. And because we would like to see a higher number of new vehicles instead of used vehicles. This was a very interesting graphic you just showed there. So coming to our truck, we have Type 4 tanks. We have 350 bar tanks on board. We have two fuel cell systems with each 95 kilowatts. And we have a 72 kilowatt battery on board. We need this because, as you know, we also have a lot of mountains in Switzerland, and we have to make sure that the trucks can actually pull the full weight for a certain amount of time at a certain degree of steepness, fully loaded into the mountain areas. That's why we need this extra battery. Then we reaching about 400 kilometers in average, like after 320, 350 kilometers, the trucks are going to be refilled because, people, you're also not driving to the very last drop or atom in this case to make sure that you reach the next HRS. We have mainly in usage now refrigerated box, but we're also going to have dry box, curtain sider, and more options, for the new coming trucks. Since we, as you can see, we are putting the hydrogen tanks and connect them with the upfit, we need to make sure that the stability is given, and this is making it a little bit more complicated, or let's say challenging. But this is also something we're going to change soon. We can even transport ADR except X2, 3AT, and FL. So if you that's also not a problem. So it's really like for everyday's usage. And we have an electricity motor with 350 kilowatt. That's enough to reach even the highest village in Switzerland. Now, let's talk about the economical lever we have with the trucks to become a hydrogen society. And I think this is really something interesting because we heard a lot about the numbers. To have an HRS running, let's say, in an economical good way, because that you have an understanding, it's about 800,000 for the equipment and 500,000 for building and construction. An HRS prices for Switzerland, it's about 1.3, 1.5 million. You need to have about 700 passenger cars coming to you and being refilled. Why is that? Because passenger cars, let's say he's driving 13,000, 14,000 kilometers a year, he's only using 140 kilograms of hydrogen. That's nothing, But to reach the same with trucks, you only need 15 H2 trucks. That's because the usage, the consumption of trucks are much higher, and they drive at least 80,000 kilometers a year. So to run an HRS efficiently, you need to sell about 95 tons of H2. And you reach this much easier with heavy-duty trucks than with passenger cars, because I'm not 100% sure the whole amount of hydrogen cars in Europe is about 1,500. So actually, you could only pay for about 2 HRSs. But as you can see here in Switzerland, we have now 45 trucks coming more and more. That's that's why it makes sense to build up an HRS and then being able also to refill those passenger cars. You know, because that's again the wheel of change. Let's say it this way. First, there are the trucks, you know, because of them we are building the HRS infrastructure. Once this is in place, it's going to be more interesting also for normal consumers to buy a hydrogen car, and because this is also then creating new investments. And so end of the day, it's a win-win situation, because it's going to spin those wheels, because the demand is bigger, no new HRSs are built, and it's even better for the trucks and the passenger cars to you know, to be refilled, and this is the way you can build up really a hydrogen society. It's a self-propelling system end of the day. You know, what are the important parts? It must become more attractive to drive a zero-emission vehicle compared to diesel trucks. We have seen this now several times. It's from the usability point of view. For example, night driving permit. It doesn't need to be always monetary things. It's if you have, let's say, a night driving permit, because in Switzerland after 10 o'clock you cannot drive with the truck anymore, you know, or for example exceptions from entry restrictions and city bans. Of course, those zero emission trucks really need to be able to deliver their goods whenever they want. And of course, you know, I mean, if you look in the future, the diesel price is going to increase. I think that's a given reality. So it is a kind of a CO2 taxation. So this is going to help a lot the hydrogen ID for the future, and subsidies to build sustainable and stable overall systems. We believe, and this is really a statement because this is my last slide, we really believe that whenever you set up an ecosystem, an infrastructure, and if you get subsidies, you really have to make sure that you can survive and run this ecosystem also after the subsidies are cancelled. Because, you know, it's a start, but, you know, the system has to run itself, because if it's not running itself, it doesn't make economical sense. It's not going to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Impressive presentation, and really setting up excellently what the previous speakers have discussed. So we are collecting all the questions, as we mentioned. You can keep using the chat, and we have quite a few number already for you, Daniel. So thank you. So we can now move to the next speaker, Stefan van der Spek. So Stefan is working from Hydrogen Motors, and he will give a presentation about hydrogen trucks, the need for a suitable infrastructure. So Stefan is the business developer for Hydrogen Motors and Holthausen Clean Technology. And in the daily work, he's responsible for creating and developing new hydrogen infrastructure business around Europe. So Stefan, we are very interested to hear what you have to tell us today.
Thank you very much.
Whenever you're ready, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. So I will start. So first of all, thank you for all the speakers before me, Alan, Jön Björn, and also Daniel, of course, for sharing all these words with their presentations. Great to hear all the ambitions are running right now. I have a story to tell you also. So I would also like to thank the organization of the webinar for this invitation to present our company, in which I would like to explain the role that Holthausen Clean Technology plays in the developments around hydrogen applications in the mobility sector before the introductions of Hydrogen Motors and Hydrogen Motors Europe. My name is Stefan van der Spek. I have been working for Holthausen Clean Technology in the Netherlands for 2 years now and represent Holthausen and also Hyzon Motors Europe since last year as a business developer, where in my daily work I am responsible for the creation and development of new hydrogen infrastructure activities in Europe. I typically involve customers, sometimes also the dealers, hydrogen refueling station stakeholders, and green hydrogen suppliers, but also local authorities such as municipalities, provinces, and or national governments. I advise and support what it takes to lay a good foundation for starting an ambition. So I will first start with explaining the role of Holthausen Clean Technology. Holthausen Clean Technology has been active for several years with various project developments that originate from us. Think of the first sweeper that we converted to hydrogen, but also the hydrogen bus, a boat, a scooter, a drone, salt spreader, and of course most of you will know our Teslas. Those are 2 Teslas with hydrogen range extender. To prove that not only battery electric vehicles but also hydrogen electric vehicles can have a great performance. And we also have some light commercial vehicles from Volkswagen with Transporter T6, the Crafter, the e-Crafter, up to the heavy-duty trucks, which I will report later on. We have also been able to achieve all these of these in the recent years in cooperation with partners such as our municipality of Groningen, with whom we set up also a pilot hydrogen station that supplies almost 20 vehicles with hydrogen up to date. I will show you with some slides what Holthausen does. I will keep it short because I want to go, of course, to the ambitions of Hyzon Motors Europe, but it's very important to let you know what we did the last couple of years. So first we had the Tesla project. You can see 2 examples of the 2 vehicles we developed to show the world that not only battery electric but also the hydrogen electric version it can be successful, can introduce also into the market. We have of course our trucks. You can see on the right side our workshop with a lot of different kind of trucks we developed the last 2 years. There's emission-free trucks such as sewer cleaners or garbage trucks. You can see that the white one in the middle is a Mercedes Iconic, which is for a Hector project, also with European fundings, built for the City Council of Aberdeen in the UK. So we are experienced already. And on the left side you see a sewage cleaner with a build-up from Beck-Lagram, a Dutch build-up company. Which we found a partnership with, and we can have a total solution together. We also do a lot of utility vehicles. You can see below. We have an agreement with the manufacturer Green. With one of the manufacturers who already are selling battery electric sweepers. And we built a range extender, so they have a solution to have also a hydrogen sweeper to use in their companies. And here you see an e-Crafter, also with a range extender built. It's a closed van for the municipality of Noorderveld here in the northern of the Netherlands. It's a small municipality without even having a hydrogen refueling station. So together with them, we built the van to have it work around their municipality, and in 2 or 3 days they have to come to the city of Groningen to tank to fill their van with hydrogen at our facility. And also we have the H2 Transporter T6. So you can see a lot of things we are doing already. The H2 crafters, the 3.5 tons, and also the 5 ton closed van or chassis. So for the hydrogen electric versions, you can use it for a lot of different kind of applications. And you can see here the development we do for preparing, preparing the complete electric powertrain with hydrogen components. So we do a lot of things at our workshop, building our own frames. On the left side, you see the battery. We select and we build them ourselves. And in the middle, you have the powertrain built up in a frame. And on the right side, you see the boxing we also develop ourselves. Oh, sorry. I have to go back. Yeah, in the last 2 years, we have focused on product orientation due to the growing demand for opportunities. The current location quickly became too small, and by building more series, we were given more opportunities to continue to meet the increasing demands. It finally brought us to where we are today by having found a partner with whom we, as a manufacturer of heavy-duty vehicles, took the step to concentrate fully on production as a manufacturer and thus to scale up for zero-emission vehicles, reaching the whole global market. This brings us to the next slide and our next department, for which I can also work on a daily basis, and that's Hyzon Motors Europe. Hyzon Motors Europe stands for the acceleration of the energy transition, and we offer our complete hydrogen vehicle out of production. As Holthouse Clean Technology, we entered as a joint venture partner in the middle of last year, where the other party was found with the fuel cell technology from Horizon from Asia, in order to jointly establish Hyzon Motors as a new brand name among the established truck manufacturers. Horizon Fuel Cell Technology has over 70 years of intellectual property development experience. We start the production in Winschoten in the Netherlands, where we are preparing since December last year. So we really are a startup manufacturer. The production hall will be ready for operation in the coming weeks, and the first trucks will be delivered at the end of this year. Holthouse Clean Technology is the development branch for Hyzon Motors. We carried out the development for the first generation electric drivelines, which we built and prepare prefabricated outside of the vehicle. Together with the suppliers of the necessary hydrogen components, you can think of the hydrogen tanks, the battery, etc. We also develop the frames, do the piping and connectors for the wiring, and ultimately outsource them to get as much in-house prefabricated as possible and produce a complete hydrogen vehicle with the Horizon fuel cell based on the DAF chassis. Now on the next slide, you will see the hydrogen truck modules that we have optimized for production. There are 3 models. The first one is the Hymax 160. The Hymax 160 chassis is perfectly suited for applications such as the rigid trucks, refrigerated trucks, or refuse trucks. This is a light-duty truck. We also have the medium and heavy-duty trucks, the Hymax 250. The Hymax 250 chassis or tractor is perfectly suited for applications such as rigid refrigerated trucks or national or international transport. And then we have the heavy-duty trucks. That's called the Hymax 450, and it's the same like the 250, and mostly used for international and national transportation. So we come to the specifications of the trucks we are building for production. Together with our clients, our customers, we build our trucks and set it up together. So we have a starting specification for the trucks. But because of the build we offer is modular, we can go with different kinds of modifications. The Hymax 160 refers to the e-motor we are using standardly for this small light-duty vehicle. It's a 160 kilowatt e-motor with a 450 watt voltage system, standardized with a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack. It can be charged with the CCS of Type 2. It has a standard 80 kilowatt Horizon fuel cell with enough power to compare with the diesel variant. So it's an overpowered e-motor, and we can also change the values of the e-motor to have it driving like the diesel version you were used to. Standard amount of hydrogen we offer is 30 kilograms. But the good thing we have is that with all the with the basic chassis of the DAF, so this is the DAF LF chassis we use for this version. You can have your own configuration together with the possibilities you have with the truck. So you can remove one or add one extra cylinder per 5 kilograms at 350 bar. But you can also have a stronger fuel cell power if needed, and that can be adjusted by a minimum of 20 kilowatts power extra or less. So we keep the gearbox from the DAF, also good for the traction. So you still have the acceleration from the gearbox, but also the PTO, the possibility to connect to the gearbox for your build-up, so directly the energy from your e-motor, and it can be used also for the other products. The Hymax 250 has a heavier e-motor, so with more power, also standardized. It's a 250 kilowatt e-motor with 350 kilowatt peak power. This one uses a 700 volt voltage system and has standardized 140 kilowatt battery pack. So with a standardized 120 20 kilowatt fuel cell from Horizon, also enough power to have the solution for most of the applications you want to use. So most of the time it's a concession we do with the customers to see if we have a solution together. We need a minimum wheelbase to have our components built in. But because we build modular, we can have the battery or the cylinders or the fuel cell on different spots on the base chassis. But we try to keep everything below the chassis or behind or under the cabin. So there's no conflict with the build-up partners, with all the different kind of solutions we can build. So with the box trucks or refrigerator trucks, we have together with the partners and the partnership we start, we have a complete solution for every customer. But there is some concession you have to do because all the components do take some space, of course. And that's, for example, the cylinders, they need to be implemented or behind the cabin or behind or on the chassis, so behind inside the wheelbase. And you also have the possibility for the Hymax 250 and also the 450 to have this as a chassis or as a puller. The Hymax 450 is the for more for the heavy duty. It's the same like the Hymax 250, but then only standardized with the 450 kilowatt e-motor with 550 kilowatt peak power. You can also have the Hymax 250 with a cabin and a stronger motor for an extra price, so it's also adjustable. If the customer wants to have the standardized vehicle, and we believe that the Hymax 250 is the one who can be set up for most of the solutions. So these three product models will be the first one will be delivered at the end of this year. So we already started this production. And also towards the future, Hyzen Motors will be involved with, within Europe, we want to implement the Hyzen hydrogen coach bus. This is a 12-meter length for long distance passenger transport. Supplied as a complete passenger bus and powered by hydrogen with a range up to 800 kilometers. And also we want to apply this to buses for 12 and 18 meters for city bus use. So we now have a first look of our Hymax 250. It's a 4x2 puller. This will be our demo truck. it's now being built, and as soon as it's ready, it will be demoed across all of Europe, especially for big customers who are already willing to have this truck in their business, but first want to see and look and feel and want to drive it and test it. Of course, in COVID time, it is very difficult to show the world what we are already building the last couple of years with Holthausen. But this first truck will definitely help to let the world see what we are up to. You can also see the skits we built for the truck. This is our new look and implemented on all the trucks towards the future. You can see some extra pictures here in front of the facility. We are preparing for the production. So these are the first pictures of the first truck we are introducing, and at this moment we think mid-October this truck will be up and running and go for demoing. We have our plant to build in Winschoten. We started in December with the start of the implementing the complete factory. We're close to be up and running, and we probably will be up and running from August on. The latest development we are doing is the inside. So if everything is ready, the trucks can come in, and then with our technology we can quickly build the trucks. The first trucks to be built this year will be approximately 100 trucks. So that's in a short time a lot of trucks will be introduced in this world from a new startup manufacturer. So you can see on top the pictures of the facility, so almost ready now to produce. We are already trying to have extra building up and running as quickly as possible, because also we have the bus ambition to build in production. So what do we need? For a suitable infrastructure, if we want to drive with hydrogen powered vehicles. You already have learned from Daniel, of course, the ambitions from Hyundai. They're already implementing in Switzerland with their module, and it's not only having trucks driving somewhere. You have to take a look at the complete infrastructure. So it's very challenging every day, but that's also my daily work, of course. Daniel mentioned it already. There are a lot of things, a lot of chicken and the egg stories we have to breach. One of them is of course the hydrogen refueling station infrastructure. Like the numbers Daniel already shared, you have to take a lot of small vehicles, commercial vehicles or personal vehicles for a good business case for a hydrogen refueling station. But if you take trucks, heavy-duty trucks especially, and also committed to the hydrogen refueling stations, you only need 15 or 20. It's also our belief to have a good base infrastructure for a refueling station to be put somewhere. Of course, you have the green hydrogen suppliers. Together with them and commitment towards hydrogen refueling stations, you can also go to have good pricing for hydrogen already. Although the standardized price at this stage is around 10 euros per kilogram of green hydrogen. But if you can commit multiple trucks to hydrogen refueling stations and also the green hydrogen suppliers involved, then you can already go for pricing, of course, for the hydrogen. They guarantee take off from the trucks driving there. You also need a good dealer network for service and maintenance, and also towards the future for the sales, because we are going global with our network, and of course we have different kind of countries with different kind of vehicles driving around, but also regulations, government who have different rules for the trucks. So it's very important that we are involved. So with the first customers, so the front runners and the pioneers, we already committed to. We set up also the dealer network. Sometimes it comes from us, so with the municipality of Groningen, it's nearby. But with other customers, we also implement the dealer network. We try to go with the DAF dealer network, of course, because of the partnership we have with DAF, using their chassis for our vehicles. And there is also some needed acceptance from insurance companies with the new technology. Not experienced with, it's very difficult to have an insurance company to also support the new technology. So we also take this in different kind of countries. We want to involve the insurance companies with all the ambitions there are with the first customers. In the Netherlands, we already found a company who is willing to offer the insurance for our heavy-duty vehicles. And we try to implement this in every country within Europe and later on also global. And of course, the financial institutions to invest in sustainable mobility. It's very important that also the financial institutions are ready to take the new technology and to embrace it. Because without possibilities to have financial solutions, it's very difficult for the first customers to buy trucks that have a higher price than the diesel ones. And yeah, of course, the role of the governments, regional and local authorities are very important. Also mentioned before, there's also regulations that can be a chicken and the egg story, because we can have a solution together for the customer, but if we go beyond the limitation of the weight or beyond the total length of the vehicle, we can build a solution, but when it cannot drive on the roads, you have a big challenge, of course. So it's also the government who sets the rules to change sustainable energy, and it's also their role, of course, to help the customers to buy, who are willing enough to buy also the trucks that can help them with zero emission solutions. From Hyzen Motors, we also have taken a step to make it possible to offer fuel operational lease within Europe with Hyzen Motors, with Hyzen Zero Carbon. So with the advanced Horizon fuel cell technology, Hyzen Motors is in a leading position to offer a full range of vehicles up to large tonnage at a competitive price with conventional diesel vehicles. Hyzen Zero Carbon offers vehicle complete cost integration, avoiding capital charges and uncertainties in operating costs. So you can have the vehicle, the maintenance, and we're looking also into a possibility to have hydrogen involved in this leasing construct. So you can go also for a pay-per-use construct. All costs are aggregated into a single monthly amount based on distance. So you have for the customer a monthly cost to pay. With a TCO equivalent to be reached to be achieved in Europe, distributed hydrogen cost of approximately €5 per kilogram should be the price to go with. That's of course a big ambition, also a big challenge. But if you have enough vehicles committed, in this case for a hydrogen refueling station, to take off the hydrogen, it is already possible. We also have in Europe, but also in the world already examples that it can be done if you take multiple trucks in consideration. 1 month ago, we contracted in Austria, in this case, also a customer who's implementing total infrastructure. And they start with a small ambition to have 3 trucks driving at the end of this year, having their own plant for the hydrogen, green hydrogen production. Sorry, they have a 3.2 megawatt electrolyzer to be built, so they produce their own green hydrogen. They have their own hydrogen refueling station. They have their own fleet of vehicles they want to convert to hydrogen, and they have enough hydrogen also to implement this and offer this to the community around their area. Yeah, if you want to stay informed of all developments, you can visit the website and register for all the news for Hydrogen Motors Europe. So please take a look at our website and see what we are doing right now. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you, Stefan. Very nice to see this different range of vehicles that you have on the market. So that would be very interesting, not only for the hydrogen truck, but also for the other types of vehicles. So we can move then to our last speaker. And we are conscious that we are a bit late on time, but if you can, if you want to keep sending questions into the chat, you are more than welcome. So our last speaker is Raino Alamar from Volvo Trucks. So Raino will talk about hydrogen as a part of the climate solution for heavy-duty trucks. And as a little bit of introduction, Raino is the Director of Transport Development, and he's responsible for the commercial future transport development regarding the logistics and energy use for trucks. So Raino, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Raino?
Yes. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, and we're here.
Yes. Thank you. So it's been a long seminar, and we are a little bit short of time. Let's see what we can do to make it not too long. Since we are, let's say, a big established player, we start from a little bit different point. But first of all, Volvo Group has committed to the Paris Agreement with a 1.5 degree target for the climate, and we have also what's called the science-based targets that has been independently looked at, and our plans are meeting that. So we are see that it is for real what we actually are doing. So far, we have launched several electric trucks, starting from the medium heavy duties, which we have in the end here, city purposes, could be refuse and distribution trucks. They have been in production since March 2020. We started to deliver this truck in US, VNR, and have sold 70, for instance, to the harbor of Los Angeles for drayage purposes. And now we have also started to sell the regional haulage, long haulage, and also urban construction vehicles in battery electric. So we think we have a rather wide offering, and it's built online. It is not prototypes, so to say, or early series. It is also in our dealer network, and they are trained to handle them. It is a very good base for a fuel cell electrical vehicle, since both are an electric vehicle. It's just a matter of how you handle the electricity generation, so to say, either you charge it or you fill hydrogen. To push the limits, we are testing a battery electric vehicle between Gothenburg, where we have our hometown for Volvo Trucks. So we are testing a 60-ton vehicle together with DHL, going to Jönköping, which is 150 kilometers from Gothenburg, It's a commercial test, and it's a rather hilly location and heavy, and this is to see how far we can move also the battery electric vehicles. And the ambition is to move them to a heavier and heavier and longer distances as well. In general, we talked a little bit to what purpose and how long to drive different applications. You can say that we have different segments, and you have, like in the city distribution, you have refuse, you have the regional haulage, urban construction, and then you come to the long haulage, which demands a little bit more depending on how you handle it. However, you can say that when it comes to city close applications, we think that the battery electric is very well suited to handle most of these, since you can charge overnight at home. That will be cost efficient, and do not need to go very long distances. What determines your operation is a little bit if you can charge overnight or not. If you need to fill up during lunch, that is possible sometimes in some operations, some not. When you go further on into regional haul, where we now start to sell trucks for as well as urban construction, we think here is an area where it can work both with battery electric and fuel cell. And what suits best is a little bit how you operate and what kind of infrastructure you have locally. Do you have the grid and charging points, or do you have the hydrogen filling stations in the neighborhood? And of course also the cost for the energy. That will determine, and we think it will not only be let's say from market to market or country to country. We think that within each country there will be both. So it's a little bit the mindset like gasoline and diesel, it's battery electric and fuel cell electric. So it's up to each and every customer to make the choice what works best locally just for yourself. When you go to longer distances in long haulage, we see that, for instance, a 44 tonner could work well up to 500 kilometer with a battery electric as well. Then you charge it overnight, and then you during lunch tip up with some electricity, and then you do the rest. That will work fine as long as you have planned routes, so in line haulage, let's say between fixed points. Will be a very cost-efficient solution. If you go flexible and run in different directions, different days, and get your orders perhaps very close to the transport and need flexibility, a fuel cell is very well suited for that purpose. And also when you go even heavier, like we do in Scandinavia, in 60 tonnage or up to 70, there is a limitation in both this, and that is upwards when you go to the really heavy haulage and also off-road and heavy, very heavy construction. It could be a limitation when it comes to being able to move the fuel cell to the very, very highest applications. So what we believe in today is that there will be needed an internal combustion engine on the top, handling the toughest conditions. However, not running on diesel, it should be run on fossil-free fuel, some kind of e-fuel, most likely, or a bio. When it comes to our cooperation with Daimler, we have formed a company Cellcentric that was formally started March 1st, 2021. So it is a young company. They will produce the fuel cell itself, but not any vehicles, say. So all vehicles will be unique. Mercedes will do their own and Volvo will do their own. And out from this will also, of course, come applications that in the Volvo case fit for Volvo Penta bus and Volvo Construction as well over time. And this is, of course, to generate some kind of economy of scale. As you know, the fuel cell and electrolyzer business is a very low scale business today. However, even in the, let's say, second half of this decade, it is not at all at the same scale as the current diesel business. So even if we create some kind of scale, it's still low scale. So we see over time that we go from combustion engine using fossils and going to electric, and we have started with electric and it's catching up in sales. And electric is both battery electric and fuel cell, and they run on either electricity or hydrogen. But we see also that for the toughest and heaviest application, there will probably be needed to have some kind of bio LNG or an e-LNG or similar kind of e-fuel to solve that kind of transports. For instance, when you're building the windmills, it could be a challenge to do with the fuel cell trucks, the really heavy applications. So fuel cell vehicle in general, the strength is climate neutral, just as battery electric. It can operate both in remote and urban areas. You don't need as planned infrastructure, and you can have, let's say, a little bit less dense infrastructure since you can do more miles between the fillings. We see it works fine for high utilization shift, and as we see when it comes to refill energy, we are thinking that you can run a full shift or a full day or each, let's say every other day. We are targeting 1,000 kilometer driving distance, and that is for a heavy application. So it is much bigger energy storage compared to what you've seen earlier today, and much more hydrogen. When it comes to the payload, it is still a heavier vehicle than a diesel, but it is lighter than a battery electric equivalent, especially when you run longer distances. When you run shorter distance, there is a parity where they end up in a similar manner. However, there are some challenges to be resolved, especially when you go up in tonnage, and if you are hilly and warm or cold, there is things to be resolved. For instance, the space on board to be able to run this 1,000 kilometers between fillings. Hydrogen is light, however, it requires a lot of cubic meters, so it is really a challenge to manage to put all the hydrogen on board. The vehicle cooling as well, you know, a lot of heat goes out through the exhaust pipe today. It's roughly 40% of the energy you put in. And you have 20 in the cooling system and 20 at the wheels roughly, even if it's a little bit higher at the wheels. For a fuel cell, you have 40% going out in the cooling system, and up on that it is a lower temperature that the fuel cell operates in, which means that you need a cooling system roughly 4 times bigger than on the equivalent diesel today. And you can imagine that is a problem to get space enough for. This is not a big problem when you go on let's say, medium duty, 30 ton and so on. It is when you go up, you get these kind of problems. And that is most of the heavy trucks in Europe. The very highest cross combination weights, as I talked about, hydrogen infrastructure density, it has been mentioned here earlier today. We are talking with a lot of oil and electricity energy companies around the world daily. And of course, it's a matter of tuning the plans between them and us to come out of the chicken and the egg. As it is now, there is a lot of people prepared to invest in infrastructure, but there are no users. So there are no trucks on the road, and trucks is not enough actually. We need a cross-sector thinking here, where you have it in industry or heating, as actually in England in the gas network. So you can find higher usage to drive down the cost of the hydrogen itself. So that there need to be a chicken and the egg solving, so to say, in the beginning. But however, there need to be more than trucks to drive this, to make this happen. Because you know, hydrogen has failed twice. It did in the 90s and it did in the zeros. And the reason for that it was looked at just for transport. And I think that is the big difference this time. It has to be for the entire society. The cost of hydrogen at filling station, I saw figures like €5. It is a little bit below €5 to be on par with diesel. However, the vehicle itself will be considerably more expensive than current diesel. For instance, the most expensive on the vehicle is the hydrogen storage. It's not the fuel cell, which most people are not aware of. So the parts you put in itself to make a long durable and a long range will cost considerably more than today. And when we look at it for these tough applications, we do not see that without a change in policies, it can never reach parity with diesel. You have the parity with diesel in Switzerland now, and that is because of policies. Otherwise, you will not have it. And that's, I presume, the reason for Hyundai being in just Switzerland. Purity is very important. If you put in gray hydrogen in a fuel cell, it will, that means fossil hydrogen, it will deteriorate and have a shorter lifetime, and that will be rather costly. So it has to be a clean hydrogen, and green hydrogen, for instance, is that. The blue can be if cleaned. So it's very important to think about. Policies. There is, you have subsidies, that is good, and we heard a little bit about that before as well. Subsidies is to resolve the chicken and the egg, both for infrastructure but also for the vehicle itself, especially since they are even more expensive in the beginning and are coming down gradually. However, that is not solving the case long term. There need to be a new and different vehicle and energy taxation principles. And we see it in Switzerland. We see there is a quite advanced proposal in Germany with a MAUT and CO2 taxation and energy taxation. And it is not enough to put a CO2 cost and increase the price on the diesel. That will not work only. So I think policymakers have to rethink a little bit. And we are in the quite a lot of discussions with policymakers how that could look like, because you need to have let's say a cost parity with diesel, including taxation. And that play game needs to be established. It is not in place today. So it can never be high volumes. It will remain low as long as not in place. When it comes to timing, we have officially said that we are targeting second half of this decade for high volume production of fuel cell vehicles. And we're doing our best to move that towards us as to an early point in time as possible. We are now in the development of the vehicles itself. We have the electrical, they are quite mature. And we are adding, so to say, fuel cell and tune it, and we'll put commercial pilots in the market. And in our world, the way we speak, I will say Hyundai is, if we should use the Hyundai thinking, they are here in our plants, let's say, in a low volume production. And we plan to have that to spread the vehicles like Hyundai is doing now for a lot of people testing. So that's where we are. We will not be as visible as many others, and the reason is that we are putting most of our resources on the high volume, and say that we rather stay a little bit invisible to the market and work hard to make a high volume solution and with many specifications and so on in place. And I heard questions here in the chat around the dealer training, and we have the dealers trained now and are under development when it comes to battery electric trucks. And the dealers will be trained for fuel cell trucks when we come to low volume production here. And then we will do that, let's say, massive throughout Europe. So this could be a fuel cell vehicle, for instance, as an example. So that was all I had in mind. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Rainer, for a very nice overview of the developments from Volvo. So may I ask now all the speakers to turn on the cameras? And we will have, given that we are a bit late, maybe we can have a 10-minute discussion from some of the questions that we had on the panel. And again, if anyone has any question that was not able to write down on the chat, they can raise the hand and we'll give the mic on. And so, I see all the speakers. So may I have a general question from my side first? Given that this is a huge webinar and we are dealing with remote communities, with islands that are not interconnected with like a lot of other neighboring countries, like in the case for many of the European countries. And this question goes to Rainer, Stefan, and Daniel in particular. Which would be your views on targeting those markets that may have like less volumes for trucks, but at the same time it might be easier to deploy both trucks and infrastructure? Maybe we can start with Rainer.
We do not see any difference. Let's say we will go widely when we go, and it's up to if there is an infrastructure available or not, I would say so. And when it comes to right-hand drive and different kind of specifications and so on, that they will be available. So we do not see that problem.
Okay, Stefan.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If we can build an infrastructure, we will help and support, of course. If there is, it's even better, of course. And also left-hand or right-hand drive, it's not a problem for us. It's an optional choice you have with our products. But yeah, it doesn't matter if it's the countries we have to focus on right now. Or the small countries. We have to change these worlds together, and I think we are open for all ambitions. So yeah, let's start wherever we can start.
Good. Daniel?
Well, same here. I mean, it's the question about the infrastructure, and I mean, you have to look in every market as a separate business case, and it has to make sense for all the participants. It's not just a black and white thing. And the left or right hand steering. I mean, that's something that's a technical thing, but everything around has to be ready. And from this point of view, yes, we're open, and and again, it's every country. It's a business case. Everything has to fit together. Then it makes sense for the operators, because only if it makes sense for them, they're going to adopt it. Period.
Excellent. So we had another question from the attendees relating to the incentives and working with the government. So Daniel, we have done a lot of work in Switzerland, and from our speakers also, Jon Bjorn and Alan, with the different countries. So may I ask from your point of view, and that's also for all of you, which are the, like, let's say the trickiest steps to engage with the governments in order to be able to do this rollout of the infrastructure? Maybe we can go the other way around, and we can start with Alan now.
Yes, yes, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that's good. I mean, looking for money from government is always a challenge, whichever part of it you want to look at. And there's so many pieces to this, because it's incentivizing the purchase of the vehicles, it's the fuel cost that we've heard already. There's legislation in relation to vehicles that are different technology and having those in place. One of the great things about Ireland is we have a project going in Northern Ireland as well as in the Republic, and we work closely with those people. So it gives us, I suppose, a great exercise in two different jurisdictions, one inside the EU, one outside the EU. But that is also going to give us some challenges with type approval, for instance. So you have a lot of those pieces. And then you come to the money side. I think the rollout of the refueling network is probably the one that's the biggest challenge, because there's no huge benefit for early entrants into it if they can wait till there's enough trucks out there, but the trucks will never be there unless the infrastructure is in place. And I think without government intervention at that point at the very start, you're relying on producers who will have a limited, I think, focus, or individual companies who may support a depot for their own vehicles, but that doesn't help develop the market for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. So I think that's probably the key piece for us.
Very good. Björn, what's the situation in Iceland?
Well, in general, I think we can say that we have been very fortunate with the government incentives in general, and now it's just a question how we can step up into the next segment. The key issue maybe has been that the construction of infrastructure for heavy duty is going to be a fairly large investment in the beginning. So having like battery electric vehicles, you don't have to build a complicated infrastructure to be able to charge a vehicle at home. So this is a new segment where you need to get the TCO in comparison with the diesel. So everybody has to take the step at the same time. And it's in my mind, it's just the commitment of a government. Are you really serious that you want to reach the climate targets and reduce the fossil fuel use and provide then the funding for the initial steps? As you could see, and this is the same calculation as we have done, you don't need a very large fleet to sustain a hydrogen refueling station, but you need the projects in the beginning to get direct funding so that we can get the TCO in general, the learning, the training of staff and etc. all in place at once. When these steps have been taken, and this doesn't have to take many years, then I think we'll see commercialization of these vehicles coming in, just as we're seeing with battery electric vehicles today.
Very good. And maybe then follow up with Daniel. But before then, may I add as well that it was just a few weeks ago that the European Commission has started conversations with the idea to loosen a little bit the state aid rules in order to finance 100% most of the renewable energy projects in Europe. Do you think that this can help with some of these like hurdles for the early stages of the investment as well? Daniel?
Well, for sure it will help, but you know, it has to be sustainable enough that you can even run it without those subsidies and you know, we are not in the EU, so we don't get any EU money here in Switzerland, and we are not a big fan of it, you know. So because I really believe if the government is subsidizing too much, you know, you can also create you know, inefficiency. Because I really believe that the economy itself is regulating them the best, you know. So it's a very difficult question. It makes sense, but it has to make also sense without subsidies in the mid and long term view.
Stefan, what about in the Netherlands? Have you been working closely with the national or the regional governments?
It's still a challenge, of course. It's also a mindset. I think our government is pushing, of course, towards decarbonation. So yes, zero emission solutions are very important to be implemented in for example, the Netherlands. But you can also see. I think 2 weeks ago they postponed one of the push models. In this case, it was a tax on I think if you have a diesel-driven vehicle in the city. So they want to close the borders of the inner cities, and now they want to postpone this or change this to 2027. So they wanted to have it in 2025. That means everyone is waiting, and we cannot wait. We need to change this this world, of course, now today. It can already be done. We have momentum. So yeah, if the government supports, a lot can be achieved. And like Daniel says, we cannot focus on the subsidies. Of course, it helps for now, also for the front runners. So if you have the early adapters committing right now with a little bit of help, it helps also for creating mass production, also creating more possibilities. But there's still a lot of other things to do, like changing the regulations and also having the CO2 tax or other things that can help to create a stable TCO parity with the diesel variants. But there are a lot of challenges right now, and we need our support from the government. So we're working hard on this. We know we have a lot of good willing customers already, infrastructure already, but we need more help from the government to also help build this new business.
Very good. And Rainer, what's the status?
I think I agree with the previous speakers. It is about we divide it into subsidies and taxation. That is two different. Subsidies is short term, perhaps mid-term, but immediately when the volumes start to catch up, you cannot have subsidies. The society cannot withstand that. Then you have to have some kind of taxation system that change the game. And that means that you should penalize emitting fossil and encourage being zero emission. And that means that you need to move in some kind. And I will say a lot of policymakers since we talk about Europe here, are not aware of what they need to do. And that kind of dialogue we are having with them, because they think perhaps like in cars, electric cars going shorter distances will be coming closer and closer to diesel. This is not the case here, since you need so much more energy, and the energy storage costs a lot. That is the most expensive, actually. Batteries are expensive, hydrogen storage are expensive, and that means that as long as you use a lot of energy and you need a lot, then it will remain more expensive than a diesel in opposition to a car. So that need to be understood. You cannot treat it as a car. It is a truck. It has different circumstances, doing a different job, need taxation and policy thinking. And I would say this is the biggest hurdle. We will fix the trucks. We are targeting selling half of our production 2030 zero emission, but that will never happen unless we have policymakers doing their part of the job. Infrastructure, I would say there's a lot of people prepared to invest, but again, policymakers need to resolve the chicken and the egg.
Very good, thank you. So a question for the 3 truck manufacturers again, and this is like repetitive question from different attendees. So for example, for a specific order of 300 trucks, which will be the time frame for delivery from each one of the companies approximately? Maybe we can start with Daniel for Hyundai's perspective.
The problem are not the trucks, it's the infrastructure. Let's assume everything is there, and the workshops are ready, 300 trucks we could deliver, let's say mid of next year.
Stefan?
makes it easy for me. Then you answer first. Yeah, I don't think it's the problem isn't the trucks. We are waiting for the mass production, of course, and we need this implementation first. But normally we have a 6-month delivery time, and of course, if we go up to the numbers, we should have more challenges, of course, how to fill this global market. But at the end, let's start first with now. If we have the 300, we can deliver next year as well. Yeah, so we can go up to 2,000 for the production, but yeah, depending on demands of the market, we can go upscale, of course, a production facility.
Very good. Reino?
Yeah, for us it will take longer time before we can deliver 300 trucks. First of all, the economics is not in place, so I don't think there are many that are interested to purchase one, to be honest. And so probably the policies will take as long time as the trucks. So I think you will not find a good game here before 25-ish. That is so it's no idea basically, unless you're like in Switzerland, where I agree that there you have special circumstances, and so I think Hyundai's decision to grow from there is good, but as long as you don't have them in place, nothing will happen, even if you can deliver 300 trucks.
Okay, excellent. So maybe one last question, and then we can wrap up with a session. It's a bit late. So talking about the infrastructure now, about the HRS, all of your trucks are working on 350 bar, and when you have these multimodal stations that work with 700 bar for the cars, for the fuel cell cars. Are you considering this when you are building up your infrastructure? And that's probably more for Daniel and for Stefan. Stefan, maybe you can start.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we start this ambition with 350 bar on the heavy duty. But you already mentioned in my presentation, of course, we also built on 700 bar, and in this case for the smallest vehicle solutions. But we can adapt the 700 bar as well. Like for instance in Germany, they already have the infrastructure ready. I do not know if it's ready for heavy duty and multiple filling, but in this case we can also have with our solutions 700 bar solution towards the customer if they want to have 700 bar. So no problem. Yeah, a little bit more expensive, but not that much.
Daniel, what about the stations in Switzerland?
I mean, they're both equipped with 350 and 700 bars, you know, but it doesn't really make sense for heavy duty to go with 700 bars because you would have to invest much more into the setup of the HRS, because you know you have high pressure tanks and it would take you forever to fill up a 700 bar truck. And you know, people in common, they believe that if you have a 350 and now you go with the 700 bar, you have double the mileage. That's unfortunately not like that, you know, because the tanks are, you know, thicker and maybe you have 30 to 50% more range. Yes, that might be possible, but the cost for the hydrogen is much higher. The cost for the infrastructure at the pump station is much higher, and it takes you actually longer to fill up a truck because, you know, because of technical limitations you would have to overcome. So for the heavy duty trucks, from our point of view, it really doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, Stefan, and all the other speakers as well. I think that's probably about the right time to close up the session. So I'll thank you again for joining in today, giving your thoughts, and for all the attendees as well. And this is also just a reminder that we will then circulate the recordings of the presentations during this week. There will be a link in which you can look at the videos. And if you have any questions, any further questions, you can always log in into the Community Hydrogen Forum website, and you can use the forum to ask the specific questions that you are interested in. Okay, so Thank you all and have a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.